evening, everybody. Welcome, and thank you all so much for coming tonight. My name's Max Fraser, and I'm the editorial director of Dezeen. We have a talk of the title, Technological Tactility, Creating Design You Can Feel. And indeed, Design You Can Feel is the name of the exhibition next door, which Dezeen has curated with ASUS. I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction to what's going on in that exhibition, which indeed will contextualize the talk that we're having this evening. The start point for the exhibition is the Taiwanese brand's new generation of laptops, the ASUS Zenbook, as well as celebrating the computer's technical prowess and the myriad of powerful AI tools. We've turned our attention to the material used on the laptop's chassis, called Ceraluminum. And as the name suggests, the material brings together ceramic and aluminium. The material took ASUS 4 years to develop, and we're joined today by Mitch Yang, the Chief Design Officer at ASUS, and who will be telling us more about Zenbook and the wonderful Ceraluminum in just a few moments. Really exciting for us at Dezeen was the fact that ASUS also gave us the opportunity to commission a design studio to work with the material, which indeed was the first time Ceraluminum has been used outside of the company. So we approached Kim Colin, Sam Hecht, and Leo Leitner of Future Facility, which is the technology arm of Sam and Kim's influential London-based design studio, Industrial Facility. And they responded by designing an AI concept device called Susa. Now, there are a few keywords ASUS associates with Ceraluminum, and they are light, enduring, everlasting, and unique. We selected 5 designers to be included in the exhibition whose work embodies one or more of those key words. And we're really delighted to include an international mix of talents: Fernando Lapos from Mexico, Natural Materials Studio from Denmark, Nice Workshop from South Korea, and Giles Miller and Studio Furthermore from the UK. The result is an exhibition that celebrates materiality and tactility in its many forms. So we're going to start with a short presentation from Mitch, and then a short presentation from Future Facility, exploring the evolving relationships between digital technology, design, materiality, and AI. Just a few small topics to cover. Mitch, please, over to you.
Hi, I'm Mitch Yang. It's such a pleasure to meet you all here. My main role is to cooperate with different teams at ASUS to make sure our design can enhance user experiences. Every ASUS product is created by our in-house team of 5,000 R&D, pushing the boundary of what's possible. With AI built into the Zenbook, we are bringing AI close to you. And Ceraluminum is a unique material achieved through a special process that uses electric current and minerals without any added pigments. This is design you can feel. We are great to celebrate this idea with all these amazing international talents at London Design Festival. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Let's hear from Leo next. Leo, you have a short presentation from us which explains a little bit about what you do at Future Facility and indeed the project Susa that you've developed for Design You Can Feel.
Yes, so we are Future Facility. As Max mentioned, we grew out of Industrial Facility, initially as their research and technology branch. As a studio, we very much explore the junction of technology, material, and experience, and we often design future products, both digital and physical. So before kind of talking more about this project, I think it's maybe good to share just 2 slides of some projects that we've done in the past, just to give you an idea of who we are and how we think and how we approach projects. So this first one is a project that we recently launched for a company called Herman Miller, and it started as a research project. And with all our projects, we always strive to answer big questions with very simple products that have a very natural experience. So the big question here was really, how can companies facilitate agile work, like truly facilitate agile work? So we all have mobile digital devices. And there's been this big promise, you can work from anywhere. You can work on the rooftop. You can go to the soft seating area. But the reality has been, we still need power. And they're great devices. Laptops are great. They're getting better and better. But so does the software gets more power hungry because the tasks become more power intensive. So the answer to that big question was really a small shared power box that allowed facilities to activate spaces with little investment. With other projects, we often design new typologies. So I'm going to show you actually a very old project, but it's a beautiful example of how new technology can be quiet and can be calm. And that's kind of a bit of the theme that leads us into our response to this exhibition. So this has been, I think, it's actually more than 10 years old, this project. And it's been the first battery-powered Wi-Fi camera. And it's also the first one that uses magnets to easily adjust the direction of the camera. And it's a great example of unobtrusive, essential design and how new technology can be quiet and calm. And that kind of leads us into our response. It's an AI-powered companion device, and it's designed to dampen stimulus and suppress things like social media, intrusive entertainment. And it's doing it by simply pushing the screen behind a perforated surface. So I remember, Max, when you came to the studio with 2 material samples. And to be honest, that's quite unusual for us. As I mentioned, we usually try to tackle a problem, answer a big question. And this time we just had 2 material samples. It's like, can you do something with this? Can you do something exciting, cool, that grabs people's attention? And while this has been unusual, we're immediately really intrigued by the quality of the surface, the wear, the tactility. You should all go around and really play with that material. It feels very much stone-like, pebble stone-like, so it's really natural. And in the context of technology, material, and experience, kind of where we come from, we were really interested in this tension between artificial and natural. And we realized the more artificial our devices and their software capabilities become, the more natural their embodiment has to be. And that's where Ceraluminum gave us a great opportunity. So we wanted the main surface to be the point of interaction. And as you can see here, you get a lower resolution image, but because of the additional AI capabilities, we kind of accommodating that lower resolution. So the screen, as I said, is pushed behind a haptic perforated Ceraluminum surface. And of course, people might say, oh, well, that's kind of really low resolution. But that's the beauty of it. You just can't doom scroll. But we designed it so it still allows you to use all the features that you're used to from a smartphone and all the features that we rely on. So you can still take a phone call. You can still use maps. You can still use a camera. So we all maybe notice, we open to concerts, and I often, find myself I want to keep that moment that I want to revisit later. And then you realize, oh wow, I just watched the whole concert on a tiny little screen through my phone, through the lens of my phone. So this is one of the things that Susa tries to avoid.
Thank you, Leo. I think back fondly on that moment that the 3 of us got together, which was really not all that long ago. It was a great pleasure working with you on developing this idea. If we just go back to Ceraluminum, Mitch, it's been applied to the chassis of the Zenbook, a laptop, and you have various different colors and different porosities available. I mentioned some keywords at the beginning: light, enduring, everlasting, and unique are some of the words that ASUS used to describe the material. Can you explain these attributes in a little bit more detail?
When we describe Ceraluminum as light, we mean it can provide strong protection without adding extra weight, which is key to keep the portability of our devices for easy to carry around. The terms enduring and everlasting, it highlights its wear resistant and long-lasting durability. And Ceraluminum isn't just built for daily use. It keeps its aesthetics and functionality intact over the time, which makes it everlasting. And what makes Ceraluminum unique is its customizable porosity and color, allowing us to provide a personalized experience. So there's a saying I learned from a media friend. He say, maybe you can express it this way. He say, something that feels unique is there, while also standing out from the crowd. Am I right?
Thank you, Mitch. If we could just go a little step further and get maybe a little bit nerdy even as to exactly what happens to that material, because I think it's very important to point out that this isn't a coated aluminium. This hasn't been powder coated, as many of us are familiar with, nor is it being anodized, for example, which we see a lot in aluminium. It's been ceramicized. Can one of you explain what happens to that piece of aluminium? Sam, you look like you're going to answer this one.
Well, I do remember you coming to the studio, and I think to try and put some context in it, we very rarely do projects where the material is the starting point. It's not that that's bad, it's just we're not very good at it, to be honest. So if a company presents a material, I think what I certainly find myself doing is I have to kind of like justify an idea to use the material, and it gets very, I don't know, it just doesn't feel good. So to kind of find a way through this particular project to see whether we could do something is, first of all, was to almost, I mean, I remember Max, I said to you, so what kind of coating is it? No, it's not a coating. Okay. How is it paint? It's not a paint. Is it an anodized? No, it's not anodized. In other words, you had to spend a lot of time explaining what it's not. And I think what we needed to do was to understand, well, what is it exactly? Because there can often be these smoke and mirrors. And the only reason we decided to do that was, first and foremost, it is actually a very nice material. It's kind of the antithesis of tech, I have to say. So if we think of glass, anodizing, polished stainless steel, all of these things are very associated very much with the crispness and resolution of technology. And here we have a material that's matte, that's somewhat textured in its speckly effect. It's warm. It has a certain kind of contrast or tension to what we think of as technology. And yet, it's coming from a technology company, ASUS, which is not a material company. So there were lots and lots of interesting, weird contradictions that we had to get through, and found that there was an innovative step, certainly, that ASUS have managed to do, where they have managed to create the best way to describe it is an oxidized layer that is done at a very high temperature without pigment. If I were to take an aluminium bar, and if I were to leave it in the garden for a few weeks or a month, you might notice that that bar gets kind of whitish. What's happening is the aluminium is naturally oxidizing. In other words, it's coming into contact with oxygen, air, and it's oxidizing, and it's creating its own form of protection. This is what anodizing is also doing, but it's doing it in a more of a chemical method, which is allowing you to add pigment to it, and you create these kind of shiny, anodized, bright colors. What Ceraluminum does is it doesn't add pigment, it adds minerals. And it dials in a temperature which creates different different kind of muted colors. And the result is very intriguing to us. And we wanted to do a product that was technology because we wanted to display that tension between something which was potentially not very techy, but at the same time dealing with technology.
Mitch, I was wondering if you could tell us more about how the material broke through. How did you decide that you wanted to develop something so new like Ceraluminum?
Yes. I think Ceraluminum is indeed a breakthrough in material innovation. It's a fusion of ceramic and aluminum, designed to combine the best quality of two materials. This material came to life from our commitment to create something that not only feels premium, but also offers strong durability and provides a unique tactile experience. Our journey to develop this material started with a search for material that could be both strong and resilient, and while still being lightweight. The result is a material that is incredibly strong, wear resistant, and has a tactile feel that users recognize it as distinctive.
In my experience, one of the wonders of working with any designer and setting any brief is that you always get something you're entirely not expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but as you say, I came to you with the material, but you responded with a device, which in many ways is very close to the world that ASUS operates. Kim, we were talking earlier, and you described Susa as a provocation. Your aim is to shift away the attention from the screen, as Leo mentioned, and towards the physical object itself, to create what you've described as calm technology. But that was also echoed in an earlier project that you showed. So what was some of the impetus for this? Where is some of this thinking around calm technology coming from?
Yeah. Calm technology, just in principle, is the idea that we all are too sucked into our glossy surfaces and imagery, and that we're all feeling a bit of a loss of control about that. So there's psychological effects of that, which are starting to be more kind of consciously known. So we've talked in the studio for a long time about, well, how might we exercise that control? Is it through software? And this project was perfect to say, well, could we do it through hardware? Could we have this very high technology idea of AI, artificial intelligence, helping us, and at the same time suppress our attention black hole, you could say. So really the device Susa, which is the opposite of is ASUS backwards. I should tell you it's a departure, it's a provocation, it's a concept. It's meant to make us think about these things. For us, the experiment became, how would a handheld device feel, coated in this surface which is warmer and more friendly, but that slightly dampens our ability to see the high resolution, the highest resolution. And also, interestingly, took away the kind of space race or the high-res space that all technologies are on. So we sort of wanted to say, let's play with this a little bit. And I think in that way it became a provocation to us that we could materialize, so we could engage with these ideas of how much would I want this as my primary device, as my only device? Am I happy with that? Or would I need to have still a smart glossy phone because I'm willing to be now pulled into it? So it's playing with those ideas.
I mean, we've seen over the years, in recent years, the advent of what we sometimes call dumb phones, where you're stripping away a lot of the things you were talking about, taking a phone back to being a phone, only a phone. And there's been some limited success around those. With Susa, you're implying that the device can perform the same functions as a smartphone, but pushed back. But how does the experience differ? What are some of the features within the device, Leo, that allow you to have still, I guess, be served the complexity of a smartphone, but in a quieter way?
I think, there's one example that we're showing actually in one of the devices. And if you take navigation, for instance, you can have both audio and visual assistance. So, the easiest way is can say, max in 500 meters, take a left. The device shows you a simple map. It shows you go straight for so many X amount of meters, and then take left. But on top of that, there's this audio level where the device can just tell you, on the left, you will see a landmark. Let's say there's a McDonald's. Just saying, everyone knows a McDonald's. And just after the McDonald's, turn left. And so there's a way of making the device more intelligent and making the experience richer, but still having that lower resolution, because the amount of information you can display at any given time is very limited. So you have to draw from other means of communication, and that's where there's huge potential in artificial intelligence and assisted.
Let's just talk, Kim, if you would, about material choices and tactility and how they impact the way users interact with the product or device. How can materials themselves influence behavioral change? Is that possible? The material can do that?
Yeah, I think Leo spoke to this already a little bit, but what I found in talking to people in the exhibition is that the touch is very different than scrolling across a glossy glass surface. And everyone has kind of said, wow, I like it. I just like it. It feels more comfortable. There's something more comfortable about it. I think for us, we were intrigued by having something that's so matte, as you say, take all the light and kind of dampen it, when all imagery that we're used to is so shiny and backlit and trying to get our attention, that it really worked for us for what we were trying to explore. So I'd say the experiment was to find out what's the pebble like in your hand, what's this like in your pocket, a handheld device, as opposed to the laptop, close to the body. And I think, it's early days of what people's response is to that, but we had such a strong kind of visceral response to it. Yeah. And that's not a scientific answer, because as I say, I think it's early days, but I don't think there's anything else out there that isn't glossy and shiny and glass. So I think it's truly a good thing to put in the world and say, how do we feel about this? And yet it's still meant to be a handheld device that acts like a phone or a navigation device. It's not a pin, or it's not a friend, or it's not it's something we're kind of familiar with. We're changing that typology a bit, playing with it through the material.
Leo, can I ask you about some devices? Devices such as phones and indeed laptops are often thought of more and more as kind of perhaps quite alienating or isolating technologies. How do you think, or indeed is Susa a response to that we can somehow promote better connections and human interaction by taking the self away from the device a bit?
Yeah, I think with regards to devices that can be alienating, it's really about being aware what the part is that's alienating. So I'm a kid of the early 90s, and I think everyone thinks the generation after is kind of completely different. But I remember there was a big difference between the 2000s and the early 90s. So we had the first devices, but everything was a lot less immersive. If you take the game Snake, for instance, like all these, my first phone, the Nokia 3310.
I remember it fondly.
Yeah, we all had them, and we kind of customized them a little bit. You can, but where I was wanting to go was it had games, but those games, they were never in the way between human interaction. They were literally just to kill time, because I was not so immersed in Snake. So if something in the real world happened that was more interesting, that phone was put to the side. And I think that's something we need to get to, and that we tried with this device is really, in other words, and that sounds counterintuitive for a lot of tech brands, but actually making your experiences a little bit less immersive, or having more awareness which features you make very immersive.
Haptic technology or haptic feedback, I just wanted to pick up on that in case anyone isn't aware of it. That's something that you've integrated into Susa. Can you just explain exactly what that means and how it works in Susa? Sam?
Conceptually, it's essentially a tactile way of controlling a display, but you can go through materials. So you can navigate control, and then you can use like a combination of vibration or sound to give feedback so that you're feeling the cause and effect from what you're doing with the device. Essentially, what we're trying to do is to design things where you trust them. And that's very, very important. You can imagine if I approach this chair and I'm not quite sure about whether it's going to support my weight or not. It means you don't trust the chair before you even sit in it. That's a big problem. Technology suffers from that in magnitudes. If you don't trust the object in front of you, and in this case, a device, this is essentially what a big part of our role is first of all, is giving this element, sense of trust. And Ceraluminum does go towards that trust building because it feels more ethereal, more primordial, rather than something that is plated or lots of lines and grooves and these sorts of things.
And I was just wondering, on a anecdotal level, what you're hoping the reaction will be to the device at this exhibition, because of course ordinarily when you put something like this out into the world, you would go through a level of testing, you would involve all sorts of different groups before it reaches the market. We're throwing this straight onto the market, as it were. What hopes do you have for it and reactions of people?
I personally like that people like yourselves would be interested in thinking about if that's something attractive to them. So is it really something viable? Could it really be a primary device? Is comm technology or principles about this being in control of having digital use be more intentional and in control, let's say individually in control? Is that of interest, and could a device help you? I like the experimental part of it, I would say, because I think it's a valid thing to put out there. What we find is that only startups are dealing with that, right? So it was very brave, actually, of ASUS to say, yes, actually, we're interested in your provocation. It's not what we're doing, but it's very interesting, this thinking. So I'm hoping that people are engaged with the thinking, and I'm hoping that they'll recognize that the thinking could not be done without the materialization of it. Yeah, so it was a brilliant chance to materialize it. So thank you for that. Thank you for the chance.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you to all of you for joining this discussion today. Round of applause.